Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alfred Reese. I wrote a book called The Skeleton's Keeper. It's a very powerful book. I self-published it in 2010. It's been out a long time. The book's been good to me, but there's a lot of people that I think I want this story to touch because it's really touched me. This story is sort of for every boy who always wanted to know who his father was. Sometimes it leads you in different directions. That's my story. Because I always wanted to know who my father was, at 16 years old, I started wondering where he was, who he was. On my birth certificate, it never said I had a father, just my mother's name. So I made it a purpose that when I become grown and I consider myself 18, 19, that I would search for my father. So it took me a few years. So in my early 20s, I finally located where he was and who he was. And so I made a trip to where he was, and I spent some time with him. When I made it there, it was a shock to both of us, but we got to know each other in that short period of time. And there is where all my troubles began. I call them troubles because I was in a place that I was unfamiliar with. I was in a lane that I wasn't supposed to be in. I was with some powerful people. My father was a politician, and he was the mayor of a town called Markham, Illinois. That's the city he lived in. But when I went to visit him, his real estate company was called City Suburban. Now, that was in Harvey, Illinois. And that's the first place I went to meet him. It was a big place when I first came. It was, had maybe like 15 desks there, all realtors there selling property. And so he wasn't there at the time, but when I introduced myself, it was very shocked to know my father had a son. And so they contacted him and let him know I was there, and he had me wait all night, so I waited. Long story short, I got to meet my father for the first time. It was a great feeling. But when I finally got to meet his wife, that was a whole different story. Her name was Nell. Nell was something else. She was 16 years older than my father. And she couldn't stand no one to be close to my father. The first time meeting my father, the first thing she said to me when my father introduced me to her was, "What are you doing here trying to steal my husband from me?" And I tried to explain to her. She didn't want to hear anything. She was a medium-sized woman, very nice looking. She was 16 years older than my father. She was the one that put my father into politics. Nell and I never got along. She was a very rude, very cruel person. She drank like a fish. My father bought alcohol for his house for her like he was buying for a bar. And they was upper middle class people. None of my father's friends could be around him because of Nell. But still, I had been there probably 4 months, and my father decided that that he was going to help me get a place because I couldn't be in his house with Nell. Nell was too disrespectful. So I moved out. So he got me a place by the lake, Michigan Lake. So after being there for a while, 2 or 3 months, my father was paying all the bills, and I didn't know that he had his hands in quite a few businesses around there. So what he did is he made me the manager of his Kentucky Fried Chicken store he had on 118th and State Street in Chicago. And so suddenly I become a manager. I had a very nice apartment, and my father was really setting me up. I was his only son as far as he knew. I was his only child. And so in a short period of time, it's like we bonded. It's like we knew who each other was. But the story I had got, going back a little bit, the story that was told to me was that my father parents shipped him off to Chicago when he was 19, when he got my mother pregnant. And they paid my grandmother off to keep my mother quiet at 13. But still, my mother went through with the pregnancy. But after I was born, my mother, she ran away. She didn't like it because my father and my mother, I was told they really cared for each other, but their parents was controlling everything. So I never saw my mother again when she ran away until she come back at night when she was about 17, 18 years old. So, getting off the subject, I just want to say that That's how all that began. As I was saying, my mother ran away when she was 13 and she left me because she didn't like the arrangement that was made between her mother, my grandmother, and my father's mother. My father was sent off to military. Eventually he was sent to Chicago until he turned 20. Then they sent him off to the military, to the Army. That's what his parents did. They sent him to Chicago to stay with his sister to get him away from, because in those days it was still considered statutory rape. My father was 19 and my mother was 13. So it was rape. So they was trying to keep their son from being involved in an incident with a poor, bare-feet girl across the street in the ghetto who was now pregnant by their son who was upper middle class. And they had all these plans for him, and suddenly he was caught up. But my understanding of what was told to me is that my father and my mother really loved each other. Now, I don't know if you can define love at 19 and 13, but again, it was against the law. So after all that was said and done, I didn't see my mother again until she was about 18. She came back to get me. And my grandmother had told me that my mother didn't want me. And I grew up with that thought in my head that my mother didn't want me, and I had no father, but I still wanted to know who my father was. So after going back to now, when I had said at first about once I found who my father was, I felt something inside of me was changing. I felt that need and that desire I'd had for years of wanting to know who my father was. I felt like I touched something inside of me and it felt good. But now here I am, just meeting my father for the first time in my life. He's never, as far as I know, he's never ever tried to reach out to me. I don't know if he was aware of me or what was told to him, but all I know is I sought him out and I found him, and here I had to deal with his wife, who was a crazy, insane, jealous woman, who was, again, like I say, 16 years older than he was. But still, Nell and I, her name was Nell. They spelled her name N-E-I-L. Nell and I managed to get along for about 4 months. And by that time, my father's birthday came around. So Nell was his wife. She was the one who decided that she wanted to give him a birthday party. She wanted to do him a big birthday party. So she wanted to give him a birthday party at the Playboys Club, because he was a member of the Playboys Club, downtown Loop in Chicago. So she and I got together. She asked me to help her. I don't know, when she was drunk, I was somebody that she didn't want to be around, and when she wasn't drunk, she wanted to be around me, and that's the kind of relationship we had. But anyway, for the sake of getting along with my father and not trying to cause any problems in this relationship, no matter what Nell said to me, I never tried to say anything back to her or anything. I just told my father about it and went on about my business. So I thought it was kind of strange for her to ask me to help her plan my father's birthday party, but I did. So we planned this birthday party. His birthday came around, and it was basically political people. It was sheriffs and politicians and stuff. And my father had CIA agents and people there with handcuffs, briefcases. It was a strange place, but those were the friends of my father who had stopped by to wish him a happy birthday. There is where, out the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of a woman. She was like an angel. She had long golden hair. I'd never seen a woman so pretty in my life. And she looked at me and I looked at her. I went to turn to my father and ask her who she was, and before I could turn back, she was gone. I spent about 20 minutes in my father's party, 20 more minutes searching for her in the party. It was a nice party. We had the first floor and the second floor of the Playboys Club. And again, like I said, it was downtown Loop. It was right next door to the John Hancock building. So I just gave up after a while, and I decided that, the party was getting was pretty nice, but it was more of an older person party. I was in a younger set, so mostly people there was in their 50s or 60s at that time, and I was in my 20s. So I decided to leave the party and go find another place where a younger set was, and I was told that there was a club next to the Playboys Club where we was giving my father's party at. I was told that there was a club there for a younger set. So I went there, and it was just walking out of the Playboys Club, and basically next door within 200 feet was the John Hancock building. And on the 105th floor on the John Hancock building, that's where this bad, beautiful club was. It was all glass. The whole place was glass. And if you look down at the people on the 105th floor up, they all looked like ants. It was a trip. But I never will forget it. The music was playing. They had a four-piece trio band playing. It was playing Stevie Wonder, Very Superstitious. Never will forget that. It was more of an upper middle class club. And of course, I don't know what I was doing there, but it was a nice set. And it was a club that was recommended to me. So I was enjoying myself. I sat down there for about half an hour, 45 minutes. This time it was probably about 11:30, 12 o'clock. I think the club was going to close at 1, 2. And before I knew anything, after sitting there for a while, I was sitting right by the window looking down. The waitress came over to me to tell me about that the young lady had ordered me a drink, and she sent me a drink over. And I looked in to see who it was. I couldn't see who it was. So I called the waitress back and gave her a tip. I said, "Who is it?" So she pointed her out to me. It was the same lady that I saw, the same beautiful girl I saw at my father's party. And I was trying to figure out, what was she doing here? I saw her at my father's party, and I had looked for her for half an hour, and I couldn't find her. All of a sudden, now that I left that party and I came over here, I see her again. So it was baffling me. So I couldn't help myself but to go over and thank her for the drink and introduce myself. And long story short, her name was Angela. We met that night. We talked. We drank. We danced. We left the club. She didn't drive her car because she had came over with a friend to my father's party, and she was expecting someone to pick her up. But according to what she told me, she saw me and she decided that she wanted to try to talk to me. She followed me from my father's club over to the John Hancock building, up to the 105th floor to the club. So that's how she ended up there with me. She had paid the valet guy to tell her where I had went. He had told her because he also was one that recommended the club to me as well. So about midnight, we was probably the only 4 or 5 people up there just dancing and talking and still drinking. We decided to go out. So I took her home. She stayed in a very high-rise luxury apartment and in a very exclusive area. I had no idea where I was. I just know it was very exclusive. We went through several elevators to get to her house. To her apartment high up in the sky. We had to go through 2 securities. Once we finally got to her apartment, the place was bad. I can't say any more to it. Even back in those days, you're talking 35 years ago, a little over 35, 37 years ago. So things was a lot different then, but that was considered high class. And the place was just beautiful inside. Everything I'm telling you about is in my book. I'm trying my best to explain to you as best as I can on the emotions and the feelings that was felt between she and I. That at those moments, once we entered her apartment, all the lust came out. She told me she showed me the bar. Once we got inside her place, we locked the door. She locked the door, put the deadbolts on the doors, and she pushed a button by the door as we come in, and her Nissan blinds opened. I guess we was probably on about the 60th or 70th floor. She lived somewhere high up. And she pushed a button, and her curtains, wall-to-wall curtains, opened. And as they was opening, she was pulling her clothes off as she was walking in, first her shoes, then her dress, then her slip. And right about then I knew what was happening. So she called me, she said, Al, will you come in here? I want you to loosen my bra. So I went in and I loosened her bra. And when I loosened her bra, she turned around and she told me she wanted me to fuck her like that. I said, whoa. I said, hold on a minute. I said, we just met. She said, I don't care. She said, I like you like that. I said, no, I said, I'm not that kind of guy. I said, I mean, I like you. I said, but, I'm not for sale. She said, oh, all you fucking pimps is the same. You want to fuck me. You just want to fuck me. She said, I got money. She was a little tipsy, and I knew she was a little drunk, so I kind of shined on what she was saying about me. So as she was steady saying, I want you to fuck me, and I want you to fuck me, and I was saying no. I was still standing up. I hadn't even sit down yet. I mean, her place was fabulous. She had a big round red bed, and she had red marble floors, and I mean, you could tell this was a very exclusive place. And so she came back. She went into a drawer, still talking and cursing me out, and she just grabbed a handful of $100 bills and she just threw them at me, and just say, I know that's what you want. That's what you pimps want. Now, there, your money. Is that enough? I said, it's not your money that I want. I said, I was kind of digging you. I said, as I told you before, I'm not for sale. And she looked at me. She said, well, just get out, get out. So, I mean, it was a trip. It was a terrible night, something so beautiful that I saw. I couldn't believe that she was such a, I don't know how to explain it, but it was a trip for me. So I left. I got out of her place, and I kept saying to myself, all I had to do was fuck her. That's all she wanted. I said, but I felt like she was a quality woman. She looked like she was a well-kept lady. She was probably 26, 28 at that time. She was young, but I was only 22, 23. And I left. And as I went back, I had left. When I left, I got my father's keys to his car. So I had access to his Lincoln Continental. He had a Mark IV at that time. That was a gold Mark IV. It was brand new, but you know those ones that had the little kid in the back? Well, that's what he had. So I had his keys, and so I had told him that I was going to hang out and I'll find my way back home, and he said it was okay. I've done it with him before. I know I was just meeting him. I'd only been in his life and he in mine for maybe 4 to 6 months. But after all, we was still father and son, and he treated me like so. And so, long story short, I got in the car after coming down all those elevators from Angeles, and all I was thinking about is I should go back. I should just go back, but my mind kept telling me, no, don't go back. That's not you. So I drove home and drove to my condo, and it was a little tough going to sleep that night because I thought about all the weird shit that happened to me with that night with that girl. Was how once I chased her because of her beauty. Only when I did catch up with her, all she wanted to do was fuck me. And because I wouldn't take her money, she decided to talk crazy to me and put me out. I said, oh, that's a weird kind of situation. So anyway, I woke up the next morning, glad that night was over with. And as the manager of my father's Kentucky Fried Chicken store, I went in to open the store, and I had 9 employees. And so it was about 9:30 when I get in. That's my normal time for going. I had been the manager of the store probably 3 months, but my father had put me in charge. You know, I don't know if he was part owner or if he was the owner, but all I know is whatever he said went. So as far as I know, he was part owner of the place. He made me manager. I didn't know anything about running a Kentucky Fried Chicken store, but he laid it out to me. He had the assistant manager to assist me because I was his son. The assistant manager was supposed to be the manager, so it wasn't no problem, but we got along. But that particular morning, after being with Angela that night, it was probably around, I'd say around 3 o'clock or 3:30. A little pretty loud red, I guess you would say, burgundy Mercedes two-seated Benz with leather interior drove up into the lot of the store where I was manager. And a convertible. It was a beautiful, brand new Mercedes-Benz convertible, two-seat, and it had that saddle interior. I never will forget it. And so it was a beautiful lady got out. I couldn't even recognize who it was. It was Angela, though. And she got out of the car, and she came in, and she said, I'm looking for Al, like that. And so I was the manager in the Kentucky Fried Chicken store. That was the rough area. If you don't know anything about Chicago, 118th and State, that's a rough area. But my father had the biggest and the very best Kentucky Fried Chicken store there was at the time, and everybody came there. So if anybody knew about Chicago, they know about the Kentucky Fried Chicken store on 118th and State. So anyway, I was in the managing room in the back when Angela came in looking for me. And I mean, I can't help it. Man, she was gorgeous. I mean, she looked much better than she did the night before. And here she was pulling up in a brand new two-seater Mercedes to see me. All 9 of my employees, when she asked for my name, they couldn't even believe it. They all come back to tell me that was a beautiful Italian. She was an Italian too, I forgot to say, yes. First time in my life ever being with an Italian woman. Actually, first time in my life ever being with any woman except a black woman. But here this woman is, still chasing me. After what we had just went through for that night, I couldn't believe it, but here she was. So after the employees and the assistant manager finally came out and said, she said she wanted to talk to you. So at first I started not to go out. I said, but no, I'm not going to do that. So I went out. She said, hi. She said, can I talk to you outside? I said, sure. Because I wanted to hear what she had to say after the night before she put me out, because the motherfucker, when she threw the money at me, she got mad. So I thought that was it. I thought that was over with between us, but here she was. So I go outside, and so she tells me, she said, I want to apologize for the way I acted last night. She said, I never had a man to turn me down. She said, I've always got what I want out of a man. She said, and something about you was so special, and I knew it when I first saw you at your father's house. She said, I knew that I wanted to get to know you better. She said, and I was being a bitch last night. I wanted what I want. She said, no man have never denied me before, and that's what I like about you. She said, I felt that spring in you. She said, there's a lot of things about me I want to explain to you. She said, if you let me, she said, just give me one more chance. She said, I'll tell you everything if you allow me to take you out to dinner today. I said, yeah, as long as we're not going to go through no changes. She said, I promise you, I'm going to take you to a beautiful place. We're going to have dinner, we're going to talk, and I'm going to tell you everything. So I was sort of excited, but I also started thinking about what happened the night before. But nevertheless, I met her. She gave me the address to this place because we live in 2 different places. And so rather than have her to come all the way to get me where I stayed and take me all the way to the place she said, I told my father I need to use his car again. He had a brand new Lincoln. My father didn't worry about anything. He had other cars. So I told him I need to use the car again because I wanted to meet a friend. So my father kind of got the feeling that the night before I had met a girl because I came in late and I talked to him about it. I told him I had met this girl, but I hadn't told him how crazy she acted. And I sure wasn't finna tell him this is the same girl we're now. But nevertheless, I told him that I was going on a date. He asked me, what's the place? What area are you going in? So I told him the name of the restaurant. It was a restaurant nightclub, a real fabulous place. So I told my father the name of the place, and my father said, that's a very expensive place. He said, that's more of an Italian mob type of place. He said, how did you know about this place? I said, well, that's where my friend invited me for dinner. He said, well, I want you to be careful when you go down there, son. He said, that's a well-known, very exclusive place where all the gangsters hang out at. I mean, the mob people, not the little black people in the ghettos. He said, I'm talking about the Italians and all the other mafia. I said, oh, wow. I said, well, okay, I'll be careful. He said, so, but anyway, son, he said, I'm a mayor of this town. He said, until I get you registered where everybody know you're my son, I want you to protect yourself, he said, because I don't want anything to happen to you. He said, so I got this gun I want you to carry with you all the time in case something happened. So he gave me this 38 upside down holster to wear underneath my arm, a very slim little 38. And I wore a suit like him. So I wore a suit and put this shoulder on. You really couldn't see it. And so I went down and, like he said, he wanted me to take care of myself in case something happened. I had no idea of what he was really talking about until I really got down there. Now, when I got there, Angela hadn't made it there yet, but she had left word with people that if I showed up with the valet guy, she knew everybody down there. It was some place, I guess, she knew about it. So after being down there for about 20 minutes, she popped out. She pulled up in a little red car. She got out looking fabulous ever. She had on a mink. She was in a white satin, and she had on a white mink coat. And we went in. I wasn't looking bad myself. I was in a pinstripe blue tweed 3-piece loafers, and that time I had nice low-cut jerry curl with waves. But either way, I was representing pretty well. So we walked in. She grabbed my arm. We walked into the restaurant. She had made reservations and everything. So we sit down. We had a table. As we were sitting at the table, we was really having fun. As soon as we sit down, the place had, I never will forget, the place had a big, long, beautiful stage where they had live entertainment 3 or 4 nights of the week. The particular night we was there was no entertainment, but they had a DJ. So they had a dance floor, and then they had all the tables beyond. So we were sitting for about 45 minutes, and all of a sudden, we was sitting where I could see the door. All of a sudden, I noticed 2, 3 big old Italian guys at the door. And he was pointing and looking at us, and started pointing at the table. And they wasn't moving. They stared for about 10 or 15 minutes. So I told Angela, Angela, do you know those guys over there? I said, they've been looking at us for 10 or 15 minutes. I said, do you know him? So she turned around, she looked. She said, oh, fuck, yeah, I know him. She said, that's my fucking ex's brother, like that, right? I said, what you mean? I said, your ex's brother. I said, oh, no. I said, now I'm into some more other stuff. I said, I thought you were single. She said, I've been single for a long time, but my ex don't want to leave me alone, like that. So before she could say anything else, one of these guys came over to the table. She later told me that it was her ex's brother. So when he came over to the table, he said something to Angela in Italian. And she said, this is my friend. She wanted to talk to me speaking English. So he said a few more words in Italian because I truly couldn't understand. And she understood it because she was Italian herself and she spoke it. But he said, all right, fuck, I can speak English. He said, I want to talk to you. He said, he said, what the fuck you doing in here with him? Like that. She said, you can't dictate to me who I'm with. She said, I had a relationship with your brother, not you. She said, I don't give a fuck, I'm gonna protect you. She said, you ain't gonna be in here with this nigga. And he rushed to grab her. And when he grabbed her, I guess just an impulse in me, I grabbed a hold of him and I snatched him. At the same time, I snatched the upside holster pistol from under my arm that my father had gave me, and I pulled it on him. And I told him, I said, I was holding his arm while he was holding hers. I said, like I told you, the lady is with me. I said, I don't know what you got going on with me. I said, with her. I said, but you just can't come over to the table and just snatch a woman up like that, and she don't want to go with you. He said, you don't know nothing about what's going on. I said, you don't either. So by that time, the manager of the club, he came over. He was an Italian, and he brought over couple security with him, 2 big Italian dudes. So they came over, and they told dude they had been watching what was happening. They must have knew what was happening when they saw Angela and I came in. So the minute dude came over to my table, they was on him, and they came over and they jumped in between he and I, and they said, stop it. He said, stop it, like that. And so they started talking. The next thing I know, he told Angela, he said, you guys got to go. He said, because I don't want no mess in here. He said, Angela, you know better. He said, so I'll talk to you later. He said, but you guys got to go. He said, come on, I'm going to walk you out to the car to make sure you guys get off safely. He said, did you have valet park? I said, yeah. I said, I have valet park and parked my car. So he took my ticket and had one of his guys to go out and get a valet my ticket and pull my car around. So when he done that, he walked us out to the car, and he had the valet to also pull Angela's car around. So after the cars was there and we got outside the club, and trust me, I never took my eyes off of him. He made them, whatever he said to them, they stayed inside the club and until we left. And I left first. I saw Angela crank her car up, and then she pulled up beside me. She was trying to say, I'm sorry or something, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear shit. All I know is I burned rubber getting up out of there. At every turn, I was looking around every corner trying to see if I was going to run into somebody with somebody behind me. I took a damn near an hour detour away from my house trying to see if someone was following me because I didn't know what the fuck I had got myself into. I didn't know who or what I was dealing with. All I know is that this was some real shit. So I went home that night, and the next day, something just kept telling me, it's gonna be some shit because of what happened last night with Angela at the restaurant. So it's gonna be some shit happening. I just knew in my head it was. And I said, I shouldn't go into this restaurant because she know where I live. She know where I work at. I said, I don't even know how she found that out. So I said, but maybe she don't know where I live. Maybe I should stay home. But I didn't. And I had to run the store. So I went to work. I wasn't in the store no more than 30 minutes. And all of a sudden it was like the Vice Squad, that's what they had, Vice Squad. They was all in suit and tie, maybe about 6 cars. They just blocked all the entries and exit to the Kentucky Fried Chicken store. Came in there and asked me. I was looking at them when they first pulled up. I was up in the front, I wasn't in the back. They came out in and they didn't ask for me. They walked straight to me. They said, "You Al Reese?" He said, "I have a picture of you like right here." I said, "Yeah, I'm Alfred Reese." They said, "Come on, we'd like to talk to you outside." I said, "Talk to me about what?" "We'll explain it to you outside." And as he was explaining that to me, 2 other big old motherfuckers that was with him was like standing right behind me and beside me, waiting on me to, I guess, make some kind of move, but that wasn't my stick. I don't fight policemen. So I walked out with him. You know, my employees, 9 of them, they was all shocked what was going on, like I was. Here I am, I got the Vice Squad. When I walked outside, the helicopter was flying round and around in a circle above me. I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. So when we got outside, he said, we got outside the door, all my employees was looking out the window at what was going on. And the assistant manager come out, she said, "What is going on?" I said, "I don't know, call my father, tell him what's going on." She said, "Okay, I'm gonna go call him right now." So they said, "Well, you don't need to call your father." I said, "What you mean?" They said, soon he'll get the word soon enough. I said, "Soon enough for what?" They said, you being deported." I said, "Being deported?" They said, "Yeah, you're being deported out of Chicago." I say, "For what?" They say, "Evidently you had some type of incident with a person last night, and that person had requested you to be deported on the grounds of you being a danger to some kind of bullshit he read to me." I said, "You can't just deport me like that." I said, "I ain't done nothing." They said, "Well, we have a complaint to say you did, and we're here to deport you out. We have a one-way ticket for you to LAX in Los Angeles. You're from California, so that's where we send you a one-way ticket. And we have it right here in our pocket." So he pulled the ticket out, and I looked at these 2 motherfuckers. They just waiting on me to try to swing or fight so they could whoop my ass or something. So I said, "How could you just get a ticket for me on the one-way for something I don't know anything about without giving me any kind of hearing or trial?" They said, "We don't have to do none of that." They said, "You going peacefully, or you know?" He said, "I'm tired of talking to you. Are you going peaceful, or do I have to throw your black ass in this car?" I said, "Whoa." So I just walked onto the car. When I walked to the car, they pushed me into the back seat. Each one of them big old motherfuckers got on the side of me. One was driving, and this one that was doing all the talking, I guess he was the head man, he got on the passenger side. And they pull out. All the cars pull out at the same time once they got me in the car. They pull out. The helicopter left and everything. I'm seeing everything that happened. And as they driving me away, 10, 15, 20 minutes go by. Don't nobody say shit. Ain't nobody talking. So finally I said, hey, I said, where y'all taking me to? They said, we taking you to the airport, so one-way ticket so you could leave, like we told you. I said, man, I said, y'all might be taking me to kill me or to do something like that. They said, if we wanted to kill you, we'd have been done that a long time ago. They said, you better be lucky that someone likes you. You getting a one-way ticket out of town. And so, sure enough, they took me to the motherfucking airport. They stood there with me until the airport. They knew what time the plane was coming in and what time the plane was leaving. They stood there at the O'Hare airport with me, the same airport that I flew in. They stood there with me until the plane came in. They walked me on board of the plane. Then they got off the plane, and they stood there until the motherfucking plane flew off in the air. Once I was up in the air, I'm trying to say to myself, what the fuck is going on? What am I going to tell my father? How am I going to call my father? At that time, the cell phones wasn't like they are now. You didn't have cell phones as easily ready to you. You know, you had those big old gulky telephones, but you don't have the technology back in the 70s and 80s like you got now. So, but anyway, I'm just baffled how they just gobbled me up. I'm just baffled from the whole thing, from the very moment I met Angela to the meeting her at her apartment, to her inviting me out to go to dinner, and then involving me into some kind of crime with some gangsters. I just didn't know what the fuck was going on. All I know that they had power. They had power enough to have me deported. So I'm on the plane, I'm tripping. I don't know what to do. All I know, as soon as I can get a chance to land in LA, because it was a non-stop. It was a one-way ticket non-stop to LAX. So I couldn't wait as soon as I got a chance to land and get a chance to call my father. So while I'm in the air, maybe about an hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours out, all of a sudden, I hear a voice say, Al, seriously, I didn't make this shit up. He said, Al. I turned around about 5 or 6 rows back after I heard it 2 or 3 times. I looked around, there was Angela. The same one who got me in all this shit, the same one who had got me wherever I'm involved in, the same one got me deported. She on the same damn plane with me. So, I'm sitting all by myself. She was sitting by herself. She kept talking. She kept saying, can I come up there? I want to talk to you. Can I come up there? I kept saying, I said, what the fuck else? I said, what have you got me into? I said, come on up. So she came up and we started talking. So she started telling me everything. She said that she was very rich. She was very well off. She was worth millions. And she was an Italian girl born to a gangster. And her father had been raping her her whole life. And he would never allow no other man to touch her. And when she finally, every time she got a boyfriend or something, they would come up missing, they would never come back anymore. So when her father finally, this is the story she tells me, and I find it easy to believe because of the quality of the woman, the way she lived and everything about her, but this is the story she finished telling me. So she tells me that she was rich, and that her father had died maybe 2 years or years before now, and she inherited everything that he had, which was about $25 million. She was his only child, and he had been molesting her whole life, so finally she was free of him. But in the process of being free with him, she ran into this other gangster who was her ex, and that's who brother was, that he had watching her all the time. But the brother was watching her because he also wanted to fuck her himself. So that's where Angela told me that that's how she knew that I was on the plane, because she knew that something was going to happen to me, that if she didn't intervene, and it was because of her. So she said that it was a contract put out on me, but she had to contact her ex's brother and agreed to meet him somewhere at a hotel. And they met at a hotel, and she agreed to fuck him to take the contract off of me. But he still said that he gonna have me deported, and she agreed, okay, as long as you don't kill it. So That is the reason why I was deported, according to what she told me. Therefore, she knew when I was going to leave and how I was going to leave. So she had already boarded the plane, was already on the plane. How all that happened, I don't know, but this is exactly what happened. I'm up in the air, 30,000 feet up in the air, and this is what she hit me with. She said, I said, what you have done now, you have made them now come looking for me wherever I'm going now. I said, they're going to be coming at me for whatever now that you've left. She said, I left him. She said, I'm not going back there anymore. She said, I'm going to set my life up somewhere else, and I want to set up with you. She said, I said, why me? She said, because you're strong, and I can see it, I can feel it. She said, and as I told you before, no man had never denied me anything, not even my father. She said, so I just wanted to be with you at all costs. She said, so he's not going to bother you. She said, yes, I had sex with him. He had always wanted to have sex with me. I said, but I thought you said that was his brother. She said, it is. She said, but the only way I could get him to take back the contract on you and deport you was if I slept with him. She said, so after we left the hotel, we went to his house, which was the same house, was a villa where him and his brother lived. You know, it was somewhere in Chicago. I don't know where the fuck it was. All I know is she said that they went from the hotel where she met him at, and after he agreed to take the contract off me and she agreed to sleep with him, they went to his house. But while they was at the house where she'd been before, because again, like I say, this is her ex-brother, and they both is gangsters in organized crime, and this is their villa. So she said that, you know, after having sex, she gave him a Mickey. She said she slipped his brother a Mickey after having him to take some diamonds out of the safe. She said, I noticed a necklace in there that is worth about $100,000 or $200,000, because I remember your brother told me he was always going to keep it. She said, I want to put that on while we're having sex. Now this is all the shit she's telling me. She said, I want to put that on while we're having sex. So she said, as he was opening the safe, he was so anxious to hurry up and get back to her that she was looking through the mirror around the corner, something where she could see the numbers to the combination of the safe. She said, so once he took the necklace off and they had sex, she said she gave him the necklace back, and she just waited for the Mickey that she slept in to take effect. She said after about 30 or 45 minutes, he was asleep. He was knocked out. She went into the safe. She not only took that necklace, she took another loose bag of diamonds, maybe about 30 diamonds in it. They was worth about, I ended up selling them for about $50,000 all total. But she took those out. But the most important thing that she took out, she said, was she knew that they had some documents and films and photos and shit that wasn't even supposed to be there, because his brother had told her when she was going with him that they was filming every assassination that they did. And that's what him and his brothers did. They did all the killings for organized crime on that side of the coast at that time. So every time they had a contract given to them by organized crime, when they go to do the killing, what they did is they took pictures of it. They recorded. They took pictures of the person who had hired them and all the information. They took pictures of the cashier's check. They just had evidence of everybody who had hired them to kill people. And so it was all there. So Angela took everything out the safe. She took cashier's checks, she took microfilms, she took photos, recordings. I had it all. It was like a briefcase of all kinds of shit. But it wasn't just of 5 killings or 10 killings or 15 killings. It was over 160 assassinations in there, and it dated all the way back to the mid-60s. And I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I didn't know what, I was really baffled. I didn't know what the fuck to do. Here I am. I said, Angela, this is what she showed me to read. She said, this is why they're not going to come looking for us. She said, we got protection. I said, Angela, you got all this stuff, they're going to definitely come looking for us. She said, not if we stick together. She said, long as we got those documents, they ain't gonna never touch us. Man, it was strange, man. Once we got to LA, I felt myself trapped, but yet I, I needed her because there was so much shit I didn't know about. So once we got to LA, first thing I did was got us a real nice hotel and tried to stay low key. I signed in on a different name. I ended up calling my buddy named Eddie. Yeah, Eddie stayed in Rodale, California. I called him and told him my situation. Eddie had a friend that owned a diamond store over in Sausalito. So I told Eddie I had some diamonds and I need to get some quick money. Briefly, I told him what my situation was. Eddie was my partner. He was my real partner. Eddie was a little bit older than me, but Eddie had managed. He was a street guy that came up and managed to do well for himself. But me and him was tight. We were really good friends. So I told him I needed him. He came down to help me out of the situation. I needed him to help me sell some diamonds to convert it to some money because I really didn't have no money. Until I know what the hell I was dealing with and how I was going to deal with it, I know that I needed to be able to move randomly. So Angela and I didn't have any money other than what she had ripped out the safe. She said that she's going to try to access her money, but she have to go through a lawyer in order to get some money released. So that was the plan that we was on. We was going to sell the diamonds to hold us up until she talked to her lawyer after everything simmered down with her leaving and ripping off the safe. Once she found out how all that was going to pan out, then that's what was supposed to happen. But after being there we stayed down there for about 2 weeks. My buddy came down. He helped me sold $50,000 worth of the diamonds. And he stayed down there with us for about 5 days. But in those 5 days, Angela had already made arrangement with her best friend. Her name was Maria. Both of them was Italian girls. She had made arrangement with Maria when she ripped off the safe to leave because they both was with gangsters that they didn't want to be with. Now, Maria was with the one that she had just got through fucking, the two brothers. I mean, it was a cold situation there. Maria didn't want to be with him. They was both forced to be with these gangsters. And so they was looking for their way out, so they used me as their way out. Anyway, while Eddie was down there with us to help me sell diamonds, Maria came out. Oh, you're talking about another fine Italian woman. Boy, this chick was so fine. She was an Italian woman, tall, slim, built like a brick shit house. This is the way they used to talk about sisters back in those days. But these two Italian girls, Angela and Maria, was really built. I don't know what it was that they was eating, but they was built. Only Angela had naturally all gold hair, but Maria had naturally all black hair. So Angela had told Eddie after she got to know Eddie for a couple of days, he was my friend, he was real cool, especially after he helped us sold some of the diamonds. She said, my friend, I didn't even know it until she said it after about 3 or 4 days. Eddie was talking about leaving in a couple of days. She said, why don't you stick around? My girlfriend, she's coming out too. We both ran away. We're not never going back. She said, you might like her. You might like her. I think you'll like her. So she got to tell Eddie all about it. And she said that. And she has money too, like me. He said, we just some little rich Italian girls. And so Eddie, he hung around. He was single like me. He wanted to see what was happening. Long story short, when she came, Ed and her fell in love with each other. They actually fell naturally in love. For the next 3 days, we stayed there, all 4 of us. We stayed in the same hotel, different rooms on the same floor. And we correspond with each other like that. And finally, reality hit me that, hey, we got to get on the move because we got people looking for us. So I told Eddie that I was going back up to California because I didn't know anything about LA. And now that I got some money, me and Angela was going to go up there and try to find us a place to dig in. We didn't know where we was going to be, but we was going to be up in that part of California. So Ed said, okay, but he and Maria agreed to leave a day before we did, because Ed drove his car. Never will forget, Ed had a brand new, pretty sky blue. It was a sky blue convertible Eldorado with snow white interior. Oh, that was a pretty car. Everybody loved it. Brand new. So anyway, Eddie and Maria packed up and they went back to his place. They drove back to California and went to his place in Rodale. So that night, while Eddie and Maria left that morning, that evening, Angela called a friend of hers named Betty Wordick. I never will forget her. She called a friend of hers named Betty that she knew up in El Cerrito. She was a middle class woman who sold real estate, high class real estate. So we ended up, after we left LA, we drove straight to Betty's house. And she stayed high up in the hills, up in the El Cerrito Hills. And very on the tip top, another very nice ranch style house. So we ended up being there for about a couple of days. She introduced me to her friend. Her friend had a room, and we stayed in one of her extra rooms in her house. She had a gorgeous house. I can't even explain it to you, but it's in the millions. So I don't know how much of the story she told her friends, but she said she had been on this girl for many, many years. She never told me how many years. So again, Betty and I and Angela, we stayed there and we talked about things. We talked about where we was going to live and asked Betty to help us find a place. We told them what kind of money we wanted to put down and all that. And everything was going good for about 4 days. And on the 4th day, Angela woke me up to tell me that her and Betty was going to go to San Francisco and do some shopping. And Betty said it was all right if I just stay there and don't worry about anything. So, excuse me. So I'm thinking it ain't gonna be no problem. But I told Angela, I said, Angela, you gotta be careful. People are looking for us. She said, ain't nobody looking for us in San Francisco. They don't even know about Betty like that. They don't know about, this is my friend. And I gotta get me some new clothes. I don't have no money yet, but I gotta buy me some new clothes. So I gave her $10,000 of the money that we already had saved, from the sale of the jewelry. So I gave her $10,000. And so she left. And this was probably like about 10, 11 o'clock. Okay, around about 2 or 3 o'clock, I don't get no phone call from her or nothing. I don't hear from her at all. 5 or 6 o'clock come around, I still don't hear nothing from her. It's getting late in the evening, it ain't quite dark yet. So I'm beginning to wonder what's wrong. So I called Eddie. I said, Eddie, have Maria heard anything from Angela? So she asked Maria, and Maria said, no, anything wrong? I said, well, her and Betty been gone since earlier today, and they haven't even called me, and it's almost going on 7 o'clock, and I haven't heard anything. I said, so I just wanted to find out, what's going on. So she said, no, her and Betty as friends, said they probably just hanging out, said they'll call you when they come back in. I didn't hear anything at all that night from Betty or Angela. The next morning, I got up out of that house because I had already bought a car. Yeah, I had bought a car. I bought us a car coming up. I bought it in LA. So I got out of that house because I'm saying to myself, they must be on our tail. Maria ain't all night long. I haven't heard from from Angela. And now Betty, her best friend, they both have disappeared. So I leave the house and I go to tell Eddie what's happening. I go over to meet him in Rodale with Maria. Maria gets all scared and she started panicking because they both ran off from these two brothers that they know as killers and gangsters. And I don't know, they felt like the documents was going to save them. But later that day, that following day, I left. And it was probably at the end of that day that I finally got a phone call. It was Betty. Betty called me and she said, hey Al, she said like this, hey Al, where Betty at? I said, what you mean where Betty at? I said, last I know, Betty left with you and you guys left me at your house and you never called me back that same day. She said, no, she said, me and Betty went shopping and she left early. She said, and I was working late, and that's why I didn't call you because I thought Betty had already come in, and you and Betty had already, you and Angela had already hooked up. And so that's why I wasn't at home, that's why I didn't call you or anything. She said, something must be wrong, come meet me. So I went and met Betty. Betty had a real estate office on Powell and Emerville over at Jack London Square. Well, it wasn't in Jack London Square. That's too much.
You gotta go back and straighten out.
Yes, I received a phone call from Betty, and she was asking me, "Well, where's Angela?" I said, "Well, that's what I want to know from you, Betty." I began to get worried there. I said, "Betty, you and Angela left me in the bed the other night, like yesterday." I said, and I called everybody I could call. I said, I never heard from neither one of you guys. I said, I left your house this morning, and I locked your door from the inside, and I just closed it so that it'd be locked. I said, I'm just not hearing from you. She said, Al, I don't know what's going on. Angela left me early. So she said, why don't you meet me, let's talk. So I met Betty. I went and met her at her real estate office. She was on the 6th floor. And on Emerville, on the other side of the freeway, on Powell and Emerville, it was the only sky-rise building they had over there. But she had a real estate office over there. She was selling real estate. But what I later found out, Betty was she was doing some crooked shit in real estate with another very powerful politician. And so, long story short, Betty knew where Angela was because Betty had contacted people that Angela was running from. I later found this out. And so all along she was dragging me along like she never knew what was happening. She kept me close to her by, Al, I feel so sorry for my friend. I want to help you, blah, blah, blah. And she had me so that she called me weak. And one night at her house, she came in with just a negligee on. I was just sitting by her fireplace. We was talking, she left, and she come in with just a negligee on, a black negligee. And I kept saying to myself, what the hell is going on? And she said, Al, I know you miss Angela. She said, but what did she tell me? She said, I know you miss Angela. She said, but Angela probably is all right. She said, but Angela's a wild girl. Angela always going place and doing. She said, she probably will contact you at another time. She said, but I find you attractive, Al. She said, don't you find me attractive? I'm not going to lie. Betty was a nice looking elder woman. Now, like, Betty was like 37 or 39 years old. Angela was like 28, 29. I was like 22, 23, maybe 24. I can't remember exactly. But, you know, I don't know. I gave in that night. It's hard to explain. I mean, it's hard to explain. I had sex with Betty that night. And I know it was wrong. I know it was the wrong thing to do, but somehow, I guess Betty caught me weak. Or maybe I caught my own self. I'm not trying to give no explanation of why I did it. All I know is I did it. Around 2 o'clock, some 3 or 4 hours later, after Betty and I had sex, I kept telling myself, what the fuck are you doing, man? What? You got to find Angela. What is Betty doing? I said, I got to get out of here. So I told Betty that I was leaving. So she just said, okay, like it wasn't nothing. Okay, I'll just call me tomorrow and let me know if you find Angela, okay? So I said, okay, I'll do that. So I went on for 2 days trying to figure out if I was going to ever talk to Betty again for what I had done, a one-night stand with her. Angela's supposed to be her best friend. Angela's missing. I don't know where Angela is. I ain't heard nothing from Angela. So after a couple of days, I called Betty. I had her number. She gave me a number. I called her house over and over again. Never no answer. I continued to call over and over again. I called for a whole week. I'm staying in hotel after hotel because I'm scared. I don't know where to be or where to live, who looking for me or where nobody at. So I finally make up my nerves. I said, well, I'm just going to drive by her house. I drive by her house after about a week. There's all kind of mail sticking out of her mailbox where she ain't been home. There's newspapers all stacked up at her gate. There's it's just a sign that she ain't been home. The grass that she usually keep manicured, it done grew up the weeds and shit just that fast within a week or two. So I'm really spooked now. So all I know now to do is run. And so I go tell my grandmother what I'm going through. I said, I've got to get out of here. I said, I don't know what's happening. The people I came down here with, they start disappearing, and ain't nobody talking to me. I said, I've got to get away. So I told my grandmother basically that I'll call her when I get to where I was going. So I left, and I went straight to Vegas because I stayed in Vegas a long time before. I knew people in Vegas, and I know it was a place that I could lay low until I find out, I get some answers to some of the shit that was happening. I was in Vegas for about 2 months. So finally I get a call from my grandmother. She said, baby, that's what she called me. She said, baby, the police was by here looking for you. They was all in suits and stuff. I said, looking for me for what? They said that they're looking for you for murder. I said, for murder? I said, murder? I said, I ain't killed nobody. I said, if they talking about Angela, I've been looking for Angela. They said, no, they said you killed some woman named Betty. I said, what? They said that they're looking for you and they got a search warrant, they got a warrant for your arrest. She said, I don't know what you're gonna do, baby. She said, maybe you ought to call your mama. So I called my mother, and my mother said that they had been by her house looking for me too. And so right then, I didn't know what to do. So I just told them, don't tell nobody where I'm at. They never did, which I know they never would. And police evidently didn't bug our phone or nothing. They wasn't that worried about it. But they had a warrant for my arrest. It was several months later before I finally decided to, it took me that long to put enough money together to put enough money together to get a place and to get a lawyer. So I paid my lease up a whole year up in Vegas in a nice penthouse that I lived up there. And I went to make sure that I had a place to live while I figured stuff out. It was very bad. The penthouse was nice. It was late. It was bad. I paid it up for a whole year. And then I had an attorney. An attorney told me to meet him and to turn myself in. So I went to turn myself in, read the charges, and they charged me with first-degree murder. Betty. They said I killed Betty. That was a lie. I knew it was a lie. I knew I had nothing to do. Yeah, I slept with her. Yes, I had been with her the day before. And so what they said is that they had no witness, but they had circumstantial evidence. They found Betty in her house. Her daughter found her. The following morning, her daughter went to school. So evidently Betty was alive before her daughter left and went to school. Her daughter went to school at 8:30 in the morning. And her school was directly across the street from her house. She had to walk across the street from her house. So evidently, because Betty always give her daughter a lunch and see her out the door, sometimes she walk her to school. So according to the complaint, Betty's daughter came home from school and found her mother in the house because the house water, she was in a bathtub of water, and the water had been running, the whole house was flooded. The water was coming out the door as the child come in the door. Her daughter was 10 years old at that time. And she walked in the door and she found her mother in the bathtub. She had a electric cord around her neck, wrapped several times. She had been shot in the head 4 times, and she was face down in the bathtub. That's how her daughter found her. And that's the murder they gave me. So, can we cut? Just for a second. Now they got the murder out the way that they get. Ready? You ready? Okay. Yeah, as I was saying, I contacted my lawyer, and I expressed what my grandmother and my mother had told me, that there was a warrant out for my arrest for murder. So he told me to come and meet him and turn myself in. So I met him at the jail, at Contra Costa County Jail in Martinez. Never will forget that. And so they took me in and they booked me for first-degree murder. And the charge was pending with no bail. I sit for about a year, and finally, after about a year, I heard on the news, and I got word of mouth. that they found a body, a woman's body chopped up in a body in two black garbage bags that was thrown into the bay. I don't know if it was the Sausalito Bay or was it the San Francisco Bay, but they found it floated in the water, and they couldn't identify the body because of the fingers of the hands was cut off and something else was cut off. The body was unidentifiable. The only way they was asking for the public health was if you could identify a woman who had long golden hair. And I knew right away that that was Angela. And so I guess they caught up with Angela and cut her up in little pieces, tortured her for the evidence that I had. And Angela had convinced me to put the evidence up in LA and don't tell her about it, she said, because if they get a hold to her, that she might be forced to tell her. And so she deliberately had me to hide the evidence in LA without telling her, and thank God I did. It saved me, but it didn't save her. So there I was, a whole year. Now I find out what happened to Angela. Now I know what happened to Betty. I'm charged with Betty murder. Now I find out that Angela's body was, I don't know how long they said, I can't remember all the details, but her body was floating in the garbage bags in the bay, and they identified it by her golden hair. Now all I had to do was find out where Eddie was. And for the whole time I was in jail, I kept trying to call Eddie's number. Eddie's number ring, 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 and then finally it was disconnected. And so I started asking someone on the outside that I knew to go to Eddie's house and see if he still lived there and all that. So when the person went to their house, he probably went down. I called him to go there. One of my relatives, they went out to Rodale to look at Eddie's house where I told him to go. And they said when they got there, said he was ringing the bell, knocking on the door, and said the neighbor told him that the young man living there had been killed. And so I said, and that's the message she was given. So I said, you go to the right house. I had her describe the house to me. All in all, I found out that Eddie had been killed too. So now here I am, Betty's dead. Angela's just been cut up in pieces. Eddie's neighbors say that the young man was dead, and so she couldn't give no time of how long he'd been dead, but she know that the place was locked up pending some type of investigation, but it had been a while, she said. And so that's the message I got back. So right away I'm saying to myself, wow, what the fuck's going on? So then I realized to myself, what they're doing is they're killing everybody that they think saw what was inside the briefcase. And that was the reality of it. That's when it finally hit me that I said, this is why all this is happening. Angela, when she stole those documents, she thought that would protect her, but evidently it didn't. It didn't protect us at all. In fact, it got her killed right away. And the only reason why I haven't been, I guess, approaching those drastic kind of ways, because I guess they figured they're going to frame me for the murder and sweat me for a while, and maybe they figure they get what they want, because as far as they know, I'm the only one left to know where the briefcase is, or have possession of the briefcase. So I go through the trial. I'm still trial with first-degree murder, so I go through the trial for Betty's murder. I hired a lawyer. I was only able to pay him $15,000. He wanted $50,000. I gave him $15,000. I went through trial, and the first trial with this lawyer. And the first trial I had, there was no evidence. All I had was my fingerprints in her house. That one night I stayed with Betty, my fingerprints was at her bathtub in her shower, because that's where I showered and took a bath with. So that is the only thing they convicted me on. And I couldn't believe it. In Contra Costa County, they convicted me of murder and sent me away on first-degree murder. It took me 6.5 years to get out. After 6.5 years of filing every appeal I could file, and all the time I was in, I was studying law. So I was able to write a writ of habeas corpus to the court and request that the court look at my case again. By then I had exhausted all my remedies. I mean, I had went through appeals. I had been denied through every court. But I was able to get back on a writ of habeas corpus under newly discovered evidence. And so, lucky for me, my case was heard by a judge. But when he heard it, he only heard it to grant me my request to have my sentence reduced. He said because the new law had came into effect. So he the one told me about the new law, and that's how I found out about this new law that came in. It was called SB 42.